Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everybody. This morning, sit down, fellas. We're going to be here a little while. This morning, you're going to hear from four great individuals who every one of them was an iron worker. They all came into this business as iron workers, and as they progressed through their careers, these gentlemen all took the bull by the horns. They had ambition, they had perseverance, and they decided they wanted to be that employer. They wanted to be the guy. They wanted to be their own boss. And every one of them did it and has done it successfully, and they are some of the biggest and best ironworking contractors that we have in the United States today. So what we're going to hear from them today is a little bit of their story, how they started in the business, what they did, and then at a certain point, what triggered that decision, what took them to the point where they wanted to be an employer, to become a contractor, how they got there, how they built their business, and the successful endeavors that they've gone on to accomplish. So this is something really, you older fellas, you've been around a long time, it's not going to affect you too much, but you business managers, take us back to your young kids, because we need more iron workers who are contractors, who understands steel erection, reinforcing placing, building curtains, envelopes, who understands that better than the guy who's done the work, the iron worker. They make wonderful employers, and these guys are great at it. So without further ado, I'm going to jump on these guys and ask them to give you a little background on how they got started in the business. And let's start down that end. Bill Sheffield, tell us how you got started as an iron worker in the beginning of your career.
Well, I'm originally from Mississippi, and I got discharged from the Marine Corps, and they didn't have any jobs in Tupelo, Mississippi for my qualifications. So I called this buddy of mine that I was in the Marine Corps with, and he said, "Come on up, man, we got a job rod busting." I said, "What's rod busting?" He said, "Well, my brother's a superintendent on there, he'll teach us." So I went up there, he took a broomstick and a tree limb and put it up against a tree and taught us how to do snap ties and figure eights. Next morning I got hard, and so I went on, become a rod buster, got a union book out of 709, and then went to Niagara Falls, New York, worked on the roofs of the tunnels, and then from there to Montana, and then from Montana to Great Falls, Montana, and worked for the Minuteman Missiles in the Sedalia, Missouri, for American Bridge on the Minuteman Missiles. And the weather in Montana got me to move to Florida. So I've been in Florida. I worked at Kennedy Space Center, and that's when I started the structural part of it, and then worked at Disney here a lot, worked in a fabrication shop at Disney. Right. And that's about it.
Sounds like you've been around, Bill.
I've been around.
I couldn't keep a job either. I had to go everywhere to get one. Next, let's hear from John Bosworth.
My journey started in 1970 when I got out of high school, and my father was an iron worker. His father was an iron worker, and I had 7 siblings, so we had a pretty crowded place, and wanted to go to college. There wasn't any money to go to college, so I talked my dad into work was pretty good in the Columbus, Ohio area that summer, and he got me employed as what was called a paper punk back then, which was an apprentice on permit. And the plan was to save my money in the summer and go to Ohio State, and I was a slow learner, so it took me about 10 years to finish college. And I kind of bounced back and forth, ended up in 1971 getting in the apprentice program, so I did both schools and work. My book number's 873353, which is a pretty old book number nowadays. And I worked generally out of the hall in Columbus for about 10 years. I guess we'll leave it there for now.
All right. Bill Livingston, tell us how you got started. Tell us your book number too, Bill. You know, between everybody here sitting on this stage, you got just about 250 years of ironworking experience here. So yeah, the book numbers are all going to have 6 numbers in them. They're not going to have 7. Mine was 750243, and I'm sure Bill's is a lot lower than that.
My book number is 692092.
Wow.
And I've been around for a few years. I graduated from high school in 1956. I was 17 years old, and there was no prospects for a job for a 17-year-old, so I joined the United States Marine Corps. And 3 years later, I was honorably discharged, and I bounced from job to job for a few years. And then in June of 1963, my life changed forever. I walked into the first time I ever walked in an Ironworkers Union Hall. And truthfully, 2 hours later, I walked out with a book that said I was a journeyman rod buster. I had never seen a piece of rebar in my life. I didn't know what a rod buster did or what his job entailed. And when I was dispatched to my first job, I walked on the job site and I was given these tools and a belt. It took me about 20 minutes to figure out what went where. And I got my belt on my ass, and then I thought, what the hell do I do with these things now that I got them? So I found out real quick that I had to learn fast or I was going to be gone. And it didn't take me long to learn how to tie rods. And pretty soon when I first got on the job site, all the other rodmen, they resented me because I was getting the same wage they were. I was making $4.10 an hour, and I had $1 an hour in fringes. And at that time, that was really good money. So I had to work hard to earn the respect of my fellow rodmen, and that's how I became an iron worker.
Well, you certainly did earn their respect, Bill, that's for certain. And Dave, you want to tell us now how you got started?
Yeah, I started in 1968. I started out working in the shop, and then I went to the field in 1970. Kind of back up a little bit, my family is all ironworkers. I mean, my dad was from a family of 14, my mom from a family of 9, and then my grandmother remarried into a family of 11. So there was, of all those kids, probably half of them became ironworkers, all out of Local 378. So when I was getting ready to go to work, I wanted to go to college. And my dad and relatives all said, hey, don't worry, kid, we'll take care of you. You go to work for us. And so that would be perfect. So I go out and get my first job, and thought it'd be with my uncles, and I heard all these great stories all the years, how great it was and all that stuff. They got this old man that I got assigned to, and I thought I was going to be an apprentice. I didn't realize I was going to be his slave. So that guy was 5'6", weighed about 125 pounds. He was about the size of a chihuahua with the bark of a Great Dane. He stayed on me forever, and I thought I was just, hey, I'm going to do a year of this. I'm never going to turn back. I'll get enough money to go to college. I'm done. That old man stayed with me. He beat me up for 2 years. He was right on my tail and barking at me. And every night, I figured out a way I was just going to do him in. Take care of him. Then after the first year, he started talking to me, and I realized, we widened work every day, and I said, what are you doing? He goes, I picked you. I said, you picked me? Why? I said, you hate me that much? You picked me to put me through this crap? And I looked at my brother's grinning, and he said, yeah, I told him to pick you. And I said, well, why? Why would you do that? He said, he'll make a leader out of you. He'll make you understand what ironworking's all about. And if you are successful, he said, you'll know to pay back. He said, that's what that old man's doing. He's paying back. And I started listening after that point. That old man that was on my tail all day and all night was trying to make me a better ironworker, make me a better human being. And after that first year when he started talking to me, I understood what it was about to be an ironworker. He started explaining what he'd been through, what we need to do as ironworkers, as brothers. And I think that's probably the most important thing that I learned. And that's I did go to college, did get my education, but I came back as an ironworker because of that old man, what he taught me, so.
As you can see,
Yeah,
things were a little different in those days when we all got in the business. You know, my situation was similar. My whole family was iron workers. So I had one day to recover from my high school graduation party, and the next day I was out on the job. And just like Dave, I was out there with a 75-year-old
yep,
superintendent who was around when they were pulling the falls with mules, for crying out loud. And this guy did the same thing to me. And at the time, my local didn't even have an apprenticeship. I was a punk.
yep.
And I was a punk for over a year until he finally went in and he told him, this guy's an iron worker, give him a book. You know, it was a whole different world. But, you know, thankfully we've evolved and come to the point we've come to now. But every one of these guys kind of got in this hard-nosed, okay? And they worked hard-nosed, but there came a time when the light bulb went off and they said, hey, I can do this work, and I can do it as good as anybody, so why shouldn't I be the employer? And that's what we're here to find out. Just what is it that makes these individuals click that switch on and say, I'm going to take the shot, I'm going to go into the business, and I'm going to be a success at it. And every one of these fellas has done that, so now they're going to tell you how they decided, how they went into the business, and what it's done for them ever since. Bill, you want to start us off again?
Well, the way I got in business a little bit different. It was 1972, and we had the election here in 808, business agent election, and business agent didn't like a lot of us, so 5 of us iron workers that worked together a lot, we got together and we wanted to go form an erection company. So we got to go talk to a fabricator, and the fabricator, boy, he liked that idea, so he wanted to be a part of the company, and he had a graduate of Georgia Tech in structural engineering that wanted to come with us too. So we started off with 7 of us, and that went on from till the structural engineer wasn't what we thought he was. So him and another guy went into business for themselves, and that left 4 of us. So we rocked along there, and then bought the fabricator out. In 1979, we'd done pretty good, and I was in the office doing the estimating, working 6 or 7 days a week. My 2 partners, they were lucky to get 40 hours. Didn't even want that. So they wanted to shut her down, split the money 3 ways. We had an office building, 4 acres of land, and we did that. And I started the company I have now in '79, Metcon, and you know, sometimes you go out and to erect a job, well, you got an angle going against concrete, and you got 1/2-inch holes in the angle, but you're set up to put 3/4 anchors in there, 3/4 drill bits. So that's why I want to be a fabricator and erect my own steel. So, and started in, I do a lot of fabrication at over the years at Kennedy Space Center, Universal, Disney, SeaWorld, and that's about it. Oh yeah, and I started my fabrication shop, and I also then got where you have to sub some stuff out to machine shop. Well, they'd always want 2 prices for it and take too long to do it, so I got my own machine shop. So now I'm pretty much self-sufficient. Thank you.
That's a great story, Bill, and congratulations. And again, it shows you what an iron worker can do when he puts his mind to it. Let's go back over this side. John, you got a fantastic story to tell us.
After I'd done iron work about 10 years and finished college, I was in supervision for a company called Mid-Ohio Erecting. They don't exist anymore in Columbus. And they called me in the office one Saturday morning and said their estimator had quit and wanted to know if I was interested in the job. And I thought, this is great. I've got a degree in business administration. I need to try this. So, trip to the barber shop, traded in my field truck, shaving a haircut, and a 50% pay cut, and I was an estimator. They didn't really dwell on that part, but being in supervision in the mid to late 70s, with overtime, you could make about 40 a year, and he popped me down to 22. And I had just had my first child, and my wife had retired, so it was tough on the family to make the change. But at some point, if you want to get to that side of the career, you just have to take a chance on yourself. So I got in Mid-Ohio, and I really busted it and taught myself how to estimate. The estimator had already left. And started building up their workload and everything. And I went to the old guy that owned it one day, and I said, "Hey, Bert, I need some more money." And he said, "Well, we all do." So I knew I wasn't going anywhere with Mid-Ohio. And when I was in the field, I had worked for Kenny Runyon, Sean Runyon, sitting up here on a 40-story in Columbus, and knew Kenny. And I had heard that Beasley was talking about putting an office in Columbus, so Kenny happened to be back in Columbus doing a 16-story or so I stopped down, talked to Kenny. He said, "Yeah, we want to do it, but we're probably a couple years out." I said, "Okay." So Kenny called me that night, and he said, "No, we're back on, we're hot. Can you meet the president tomorrow morning?" I said, "Sure." So Bill Landfair was in town, went down, interviewed, went to work for John F. Beasley. Kenny and I were kind of the whole office staff of this Midwest office, and we built it up into a pretty substantial operation. And in the late 80s, Beasley had been sold to a public company, and that was not a real good integration of a old-time steel erector and a public company, so there were a lot of issues there. But in 1990, they called my house in May on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock and said, "We want you to move to Dallas August 1st and become president of the Dallas division of Beasley." And I said, "Awesome, I'll be there." And my wife, when I hung up, said, "Who was that?" And I said, "Oh, we're going to Dallas." So we loaded up the kids, and had 3 at that time, and moved down to Texas, and we were in a rebuilding phase of Beasley at the time. And shortly after I moved there, what we figured out is the parent company was broke. And we continued for a while to build big bridges and big buildings without any money, and it's a rough education. But we learned a lot about ourselves and about the people we dealt with. So the parent company started liquidating assets to get the bank off their back. Long story short, Beasley had so many assets that they became one targeted for liquidation. And after 5 years in Dallas, I was out looking for a job again, and a guy that knew me called me up, and he said, "Hey, let's buy some of these Beasley assets." And I got a lot of want to, but I don't have any money. I got 3 little kids. I've only lived down here 5 years. So he said, "I got the cash." So long story short, he only had a little bit of cash. He talked about a lot of cash, but he only wanted to put a little bit. He didn't want to bet the farm on me. He just wanted to bet a little bit. So we started with very little money. He paid for his stock with cash, and I paid for mine with a note to be paid out of future bonuses if we ever lived that far. And we started work May 1st of 1995, 21 years ago. And the first year in business our volume was $311,000, which would be a really crappy month right now, but that was our first year in business. We didn't have enough money to go at it fast, but we grew, we took care of our cash, we invested in the business, and this year we're going to do something in the range of 700,000 man hours. We do almost all of that work in the Southwest. Most jobs, we're the only union erector on the bid list. Virtually all jobs, we're the only union contractor on site. So you can compete. You just got to work hard at it. You got to work with your labor partner, and you can compete with the open shop. Absolutely. We do it every day, and we whoop them.
Fantastic, John. That's a great story. Dave, tell us about California.
What do you want to know?
The secret.
Yeah, there is none. We started out, again, in 1976. My brother and I had an opportunity to buy out my dad's partner. My dad had a company that he'd started with his partner in '68. So the partner came to us and said, you're my succession plan. Let's get together and figure out a way to do this. So my brother and I, the company didn't have enough work at the time, so we went to work with another firm. In fact, that old man I was telling you about earlier, the guy that had the bark, he's the one who got us a job at a local brewery where we put up the brewery for him, and it was 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, and we did that for 13 months. So we banked enough money to buy out my dad's partner. And so in 1977, California Erectors became a family corporation. 3 partners, my father, my brother, and I. And much like John was saying, our first year, I got in and I learned a little bit about the business side when I was in college, and got to mentor my dad's partner for a year before he left. So we looked at things, and I was able to calculate all that stuff out. And I looked at it and I said, okay, in order for us to break even, we're going to need $700,000 in sales for the year. And I looked at that and I said, what are we doing now? We're doing about $400,000 a year. So I did the quick calculation. I said, excuse me, I think I left my jacket someplace, Houston, Texas. I need to leave. But we went through, and from that point on, from 1977 to today, like John said, that money, the 400 or 500 or 600,000 bucks, if we do that in a month, it's a bad month for us. So it's gone strong, and the only reason it's gone strong is the partnership we've had with the Ironworkers Union. I mean, all those guys, those relatives I talked about, and all the friends that we've had through the years, we couldn't have done it without their help, and we appreciate that. John said when we first got started, things were pretty grim. We were on unemployment for a while, but one thing we did, and we swore to that old man that taught me everything I knew, that we would never not make a payment. And so the ironworkers always got their money first. We always made our fringe benefits first, still do, before they get paid, before we get paid. And that was the promise I made to that old guy that taught me everything that I learned in the field. So that's something we've done. And again, much like John, we're fairly successful at what we do. We just finished our, I think, 207 million tons of steel that we erected. I think our brochure says we do about installed 10, 15 million bolts. We've installed weld metal, probably 5 million pounds of weld metal. So we think we've done well. We've done 3,100 projects through those years, and it's been a successful company. And I can honestly say, again, without the ironworkers, we couldn't have done any of it. The partnership has been fantastic. We have, like John said, some of the times we've gone into Indian country and didn't have a prayer doing some of the stuff. With the help of the union, we've gone in there and we've done some remarkable things. Los Angeles, well, I'll tell one quick story. We were in Los Angeles after the Northridge earthquake, and the non-union was making an inroad in there. They'd taken a building and they'd taken it from us. They beat us pretty badly. The contractor called us up and said, we want you guys in there to take over for them, or they're going to start half of it, you start at the other end and do it. And we said, there's no chance we're going to be as cheap as they were. They were half our rate. They called us and said, you got to come in. we're dire needs. The owner's got to have this building. We got to have units. We came in, talked to the ironworkers out of 433. We went in there we picked up half the crew from our home local, 377, half the crew from 433. We went in there. They were half our cost. We did it in half the time they did it in. We saved the owner about 20% of what he paid those guys to do it. And we went back, not only finished our half, we went back and finished all the welding that they had done. We repaired all theirs and did it again. So that owner, that initial cost with the help of the ironworkers, we saved the owner a ton of dough and got his building open on time. So that's the kind of partnership we have with the ironworkers, and that's made us who we are. So we appreciate that. We appreciate
Fantastic. That was great. All right, we've heard from three guys who did it on the structural side of the business. You know, we also do a lot of other things as ironworkers. And one of the biggest things we do is reinforcing. And now we're going to have Bill Livingston tell us what motivated him, how he got started in the rebar business, some of the pitfalls, and how he got to be where he's at.
You know, I'd be lying to you if I said I had any motivation other than improving the lifestyle for my family. That was my sole motivation for starting my company. It was 10 years after I began my career as an iron worker. The year was 1973, and I started my company then, which I called Quality Resteel. And we have been in business now for 43 years. All we do is reinforcing steel. We've worked on projects as small as 1 ton and as big as 15,000 ton. And through all those 43 years, we have employed one trade only, the union iron worker. And we only work in the state of Michigan. And now we have a lot of competition that we didn't have 43 years ago, and that's the non-union, carpenters and laborers. We've managed to survive, but it gets more difficult every year as they keep encroaching on our work jurisdiction. And I don't know how we're going to end it or if we're going to be successful over the coming years, but I certainly hope we can recapture some of the market that we've lost. But I have to tell you, my highlight of my career came in the year 2001. I was the president of the National Association of the Reinforcing Steel Contractors, and general president of the Iron Workers was Joe Hunt. And Joe asked me if I would come to the convention that year and speak. And I immediately told him, yes, I'd be glad to. And I have to tell you, that was the highlight of my career. Thank you.
All right, Bill, we appreciate it. You've had a fantastic career. 43 years is a long time to be working as an employer, plus all the 10 years before. So you can see how long Bill's been at it. And Bill, with all these people here, that's the purpose. We're going to make sure that work doesn't go away. That's what it's all about. That's why everybody's here. You've heard from these people. These are the people that employ ironworkers, that employ the people that we represent. I represented, you represent as ironworker representatives. Our clients out there, their clients, they're the people they go out and do the job for and do a quality job, and the clients know it and they appreciate it. They know these people can get the job done for them, and these people, as they've stated, they know the partnership with the ironworkers is going to keep them competitive, because we all know that there's two worlds out there, and the other world is a little bit cheaper than ours. But as Dave demonstrated with the job he talked about in Local 433, when it comes to getting it, nobody gets it like the union ironworker employer and the union ironworker. And that's what makes us what we are, and that's what's going to continue to drive us. But these guys, they had ambition when they became ironworkers. They had the desire to succeed, the drive, the ambition, and the persistence, because they went through down times. You heard these guys say, you know, there was days when they were wondering where the next meal was coming from, unemployment, not getting paid, getting a pay cut in half. You know, these guys were determined to succeed, and what you're looking at up here is wonderful success stories. And this industry, as these folks get older and they get out of the business, we need younger people, iron workers who understand the business and have the same qualities that these individuals have. They have that desire to succeed, the persistence to go at it and not let bad times or obstacles deter them, just keep going. Head first, right into it, and we're going to keep on doing the same thing. But these guys are a great example, and this is what needs to be instilled in our young ironworkers coming out through apprenticeship, out of apprenticeship. Get aggressive, get out there, let's corner that market, let's be the guys doing the work. And I really appreciate what these guys have done for us, and I'd like to give them all a big hand, and thank you for listening.